She was just a girl in the crowd, until her scream exposed an assassination plot. Now the president wants to thank her, and the traitors who tried to kill him want her dead. The summer heat pressed down on Detroit like a sweaty palm as thousands gathered to catch a glimpse of President Donald Trump. The air buzzed with excitement, the smell of popcorn and sunscreen mixing with the occasional whiff of diesel from the idling motorcade. Among the sea of red hats and American flags stood Keisha Johnson, a lanky 17-year-old with braids that whipped in the wind as she craned her neck for a better view. She hadn't even wanted to come. Her uncle Marcus, a Secret Service lifer, had practically dragged her here. "You spend too much time with your nose in those aviation textbooks," he'd said. "Come see real history in the making." Keisha's eyes weren't on the podium, though. They were locked on Air Force One, gleaming like a white bullet under the midday sun. That's when she noticed him. A mechanic in a Navy jumpsuit, his face partially hidden by sunglasses, moving too quickly near the landing gear. Something about the way he kept glancing over his shoulder set off alarms in Keisha's brain. She pulled out her phone, zooming in on the man's hands. Was that wire cutters? Her aviation maintenance certification classes flashed through her mind. The specific way hydraulic lines should be secured. The consequences of tampering. The man wiped his brow with a shaky hand before shoving something into his pocket and walking briskly toward a service vehicle. "Uncle Marcus!" Keisha yelled over the crowd noise, but her voice was swallowed by the roar of applause as Trump finished his speech. The president was now shaking hands along the barricade, moving steadily toward the boarding stairs. Her warning came 3 seconds before Trump's foot touched the stair. Would it be enough? Keisha's body moved before her brain could second-guess. She ducked under the security rope, her sneakers slapping against hot pavement as she sprinted toward the motorcade. "Stop! Stop!" she screamed, but her voice was lost in the noise. A tourist's elbow caught her ribs as she shoved through the packed crowd. She could see Trump now, just 20 yards away, reaching for the handrail. The suspicious mechanic was already driving, away in a service truck. With a final burst of speed, Keisha broke through the front line. "Mr. President, your plane's sabotaged!" The reaction was instantaneous. 3 agents tackled her to the ground, her cheek scraping against asphalt. "Gun! Gun!" someone shouted, and suddenly she was buried under 300 pounds of Kevlar and muscle. Trump froze mid-step, his famous scowl deepening. "What in God's name? Landing gear!" Keisha gasped against the weight on her back. "I saw hydraulic lines, cut!" And Diaz. Agent yanked her head up by her braids. "You have 3 seconds to explain before you're in Gitmo, sweetheart." Through watering eyes, Keisha saw the mechanic's truck speeding toward the perimeter fence. "Him? The guy in the—" The truck screeched around a corner and vanished. A tense silence fell over the security detail. Then the radio crackled. "Eagle, this is Nest. We've got something. Recommend full sweep before boarding." Trump's eyes locked onto Keisha's. For a heartbeat, she saw something unexpected. Not anger, but calculating curiosity. "You better be right, kid," he muttered, stepping back from the stairs. Keisha's pulse pounded in her ears. She had seconds to decide. Risk everything on a hunch, or let the president board what might be a death trap. Her warning came seconds before he stepped onto a death trap. The bomb squad found the evidence. But the real shock was who wanted Trump. Dead. The next hour passed in a blur of interrogation rooms and fingerprint scanners. Keisha sat on a cold metal chair in a DTW airport security office, her wrists still aching from the zip ties they'd used earlier. "You realize the penalty for threatening the president is 20 years, right?" The FBI agent, Agent Coulson, his badge red, leaned across the table. Keisha swallowed hard. "I didn't threaten anyone. I was trying to—" The door burst open. A young tech in a Homeland Security windbreaker looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Sir, you need to see this." On the monitor, bomb squad footage showed a gaping hole in Air Force One's undercarriage. Zoomed-in images revealed severed hydraulic lines, and what looked like— "Is that plastique?" Keisha whispered. Agent Coulson's coffee cup hit the floor. "Jesus Christ!" The tech nodded. "Rigged to fail at cruising altitude. The explosion would have been blamed on mechanical failure." Keisha's hands started shaking. She'd been right. That meant the mechanic was— Her thoughts were interrupted by breaking news on the office TV. Breaking. Attempted assassination of president thwarted by Detroit teen. Suspect at large. Her school photo filled the screen. Across town, in a dimly lit motel room, a man watched the same broadcast. He dropped his cigarette into a soda can with a hiss and dialed a number from memory. "The Johnson girl saw me," he murmured in Russian-accented English. "She needs to disappear." The White House wanted to thank her. The conspirators wanted her dead, and she was running out of places to hide. By midnight, Keisha had become the most famous teenager in America. CNN ran chyrons calling her the savior of Air Force One. Twitter exploded with Yassifine Keisha hashtags, and President Trump himself tweeted, "This brave young woman saved countless lives. The White House will be honoring her." But Keisha wasn't checking social media. She was sitting in her uncle's bulletproof government Tahoe, watching her neighborhood crawl with reporters and police cruisers. "We can't go home," Marcus said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Not after that voicemail." The burner phone between them replayed the raspy threat. "Tell your niece to forget what she saw, or we'll make sure she forgets everything." Keisha stared at the Capital One Arena parking garage where they'd been hiding for hours. "Who are these people, Uncle Marcus?" Her uncle, a man who'd served 3 presidents, looked genuinely scared. "People with enough power to sabotage Air Force One, people who clearly have help inside." A news alert buzzed on the dashboard screen. "FBI identifies suspect as former Russian intelligence officer. Believed to be in U.S. under diplomatic cover." Marcus turned to Keisha. "We need to get you to the White House. It's the only place safe enough now." As they pulled onto I-395, neither noticed the black Suburban with diplomatic plates merging 3 cars back. The White House wanted to thank her. The conspirators wanted her dead. And she was running out of places to hide. By midnight, Keisha had become the most famous teenager in America. CNN ran chyrons calling her the savior of Air Force One. Twitter exploded with the Find Keisha hashtags. And President Trump himself tweeted, "This brave young woman saved countless lives. The White House will be honoring her." But Keisha wasn't checking social media. She was sitting in her uncle's bulletproof government Tahoe, watching her neighborhood crawl with reporters and police cruisers. "We can't go home," Marcus said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Not after that voicemail." The burner phone between them replayed the raspy threat. "Tell your niece to forget what she saw, or we'll make sure she forgets everything." Keisha stared at the Capital One Arena parking garage where they'd been hiding for hours. "Who are these people, Uncle Marcus?" Her uncle, a man who'd served 3 presidents, looked genuinely scared. "People with enough power to sabotage Air Force One, people who clearly have help inside." A news alert buzzed on the dashboard screen. "FBI identifies suspect as former Russian intelligence officer, believed to be in U.S. under diplomatic cover." Marcus turned to Keisha. "We need to get you to the White House. It's the only place safe enough now." As they pulled onto I-395, neither noticed the black Suburban with diplomatic plates merging. The Oval Office meeting would make her famous, but the handshake that nearly got her killed 3 cars back. The Rose Garden was in full bloom as Keisha stepped onto the White House grounds, her cheap dress shoes crunching on the pristine gravel. A Marine in dress blues nodded respectfully. "Miss Johnson, the president's waiting." The Oval Office was smaller than she'd imagined, yet somehow more powerful. Trump stood by the resolute desk, his famous scowl replaced with something resembling gratitude. "Keisha Johnson," he boomed, "the girl who saved my ass." Cameras flashed as he pinned the Presidential Citizen's Medal to her dress. Reporters shouted questions, but Keisha barely heard them. Her eyes were locked on Senator Richard Whitmore, shaking hands with, her blood ran cold, the same Secret Service agent who'd tackled her in Detroit, working with our Russian counterparts to investigate, Whitmore was saying to Trump. Keisha's medal suddenly felt heavy. Russian counterparts? The same ones who'd sent the mechanic. As the ceremony ended, Whitmore clasped her hand with a politician's smile. "We're all so grateful, my dear." His cufflink brushed her wrist, a familiar eagle, insignia, the same one the mechanic had been wearing. That night, in a secured White House bedroom, Keisha stared at the ceiling. The president thought this was over. The FBI thought they had leads. But as she replayed Whitmore's smirk in her mind, Keisha knew one terrifying truth. The conspiracy hadn't been stopped. It had just gotten closer to its target.